Hello, bastard viewers. It's been a hell of a league start, and I mean that in more ways than one. I've had some great bouts of good fortune. In addition to that, it's an amazing league. But most importantly, I'm kind of enjoying this build a lot. I'm in kind of just a generic T16 beach. The monsters have more life and cannot be stunned, and cannot be stunned is actually a pretty decent reduction in damage for us because we get more damage on stuns, of course. The build feels great to play, very durable, but I maybe underestimated how long it would take to feel good, I think is the best way to put it. Because it does take a little bit of work, and there are some things you get late that really make it feel better. Specifically, finally 6-linking my weapon for the blood magic life tap setup on my war cries was actually really important for this one. Obviously it functioned without it because I did not get my proper weapon that I have now until after I had already gotten my first 2 void stones. I'm still using the skin for it because I think it looks cool, but the actual weapon I have is much better now. It's this. This was very expensive, and I added that 20% fizz after the fact myself. Before that, I was just using Tuoa's Felling, I believe is what it's called, which I made a video about that 1C for your league start dream on mapping, and yeah, that got me through my void stones, which is kind of nuts when you think about it, that the build was okay to get you there with just a 1C unique. Obviously I could have made a rare that was pretty comparable very early on in the mapping as well, and it would have gotten the job done. The build is very resilient, as I usually make them. Not much of a surprise there, really. The DPS was... I don't want to say it was lower than I expected, because, quite frankly, I had a terrible weapon. That weapon that I was using was not good by the time I was in, like, T16s, but it still got the job done. There were a few pain points where I was, like, maybe not loving it, like if I ever ran into Alva. A temple could get pretty rough. That's all fine now since I've upgraded to this. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the build and maybe give an update on some things I found help the most with it. Especially now that, well, I've experienced it properly. Trade with this guy while we're talking. One of the biggest things is, pretty quickly after release, this jewel, the Light of Meaning with fire damage, actually became pretty cheap. That's like a 1-div unique, very affordable. So go nuts for it. It will help you a lot. I would say, I'll show you in a second what nodes I would cut early to kind of get to that a little quicker, because that will give you a huge amount of damage and also incentivize you to get some more survivability earlier, which is very good. Specifically, these damage nodes here, these life nodes here could go. I have picked up Unwavering Stance in the meanwhile. I'm not sure if I still need that. I picked that up for a specific map I was doing. But these damage nodes here, these life nodes here, this life node here, which is still missing for me. You could go for this too if you don't need the resistance, but you can basically cut these to get this damage here along with this jewel if you're feeling a little on the low side, and that will patch things up very well for you. That kind of puts the punch into it. Also, it's pure fire damage, which means it scales the explosion of Infernal Blow, like the corpse explosion, much better than normal. Which is, I mean, that's very nice on itself, in itself. As for the bossing, the build is incredibly durable. I was doing, I believe it was Searing Exarch, and I completely fudged the meatball phase, whatever you want to call that, and I got through it just fine. I could take a lot of hits with Val Molten Shell up. As for how the build performs with low gear, the weapon you can kind of skate by without a good one, but I would say certain pieces of equipment you want to invest in early, like the jewel I showed, Diadian Dawn, big one as well, but having a good body armor, like this one here, big difference, because so much of our armor scaling actually just comes from raw armor, like on the actual equipment. So I've kind of been working to invest into that. As you can see, my body armor and my helmet together gives quite a lot. It's pretty impactful. I'm up to 18k now without Flask active, which is feeling rather good when you factor in endurance charges and everything, and also the fact that I'm not running Determination, which means I've got more damage elsewhere, which is probably another reason why the damage felt okay, all things considered. I'm also res capped, 83% on everything currently because that's what I've got for mods on my equipment, along with the tree. Turn it up on this guy for a second. One of the things I found is that once you get your Warcry set up like this, your mana efficiency is much better, and the Tincture actually starts to feel really good to use. And don't be dumb like me, remember to get your War Banner set up pretty early. And just enjoy the game, honestly. It's a great league. Don't forget to Warcry. All of our defenses are in the Warcry. No, not all of them, but the regen is. That seems to be the thing that I kind of underestimated most about this build. It's very hard for us to die because it's very hard for something to kill us outright. And if something doesn't kill us outright, we get all of our health back. That's how the build plays. So watch your defenses. And oh, you know what? Just as a little aside, maybe not even a little aside, this is probably something I should have started with earlier. Map mods. I underestimated what map mods would be dangerous and what wouldn't. Specifically, Monster Steel Frenzy, Endurance, and Power Charges is like actually the worst map mod for this build. Don't touch it. Buffs expire fast and increased cooldown are also pretty bad. Although once you're set up, increased cooldown is manageable. Buffs expire faster can be less so. As again, we get so much out of our Warcries being up, and that kind of just challenges that. With more gear, it'll probably be fine because we won't need to have them up all the time for the build to function well. We're not quite there yet though. Currently, I need to get like a new amulet going for my build. I think that's going to be the biggest step up for damage that I can get right now because you can get a lot of good offensive stats on it. And then my gloves need to be replaced as well. They're pretty outdated. But otherwise, the build's coming along really well. It's very durable. It maps well. The single target is good enough, which is kind of how I do builds. You know, the build is either going to have the crazy DPS to do aspirational content, or it's going to map well. And you have to pick your lane on that. I don't know if there's going to be a version of the build that does aspirational content, but I think it's possible. I'm talking, not paying attention. That guy's gonna have to wait. Oh my god. Blight, dude. I haven't had that happen to me a single time yet. There's just constant projectiles. I'd love to see the build that survives that. I know, the guy wants it. Yikes, dude. So anyway, pretty embarrassing considering I have a total, what, 23 deaths on this account? Most of them are from early on, mind you. Well, it's gonna happen. Especially if you're doing Blight, apparently. That was absurd. Okay. Stop getting distracted. So yeah, basically, League is like 10 out of 10 for me. It's at the point where if this doesn't go core, I'm going to be very sad. The mechanic is like perfect, I feel. The introduction of gold was done absolutely exactly how it should have been, I think. Being able to use it for respec is kind of something I haven't done much of yet that I should maybe have leaned on a bit more because I've wasted regrets when I could have just cash. Although the requirements for gold are very high, and there's probably an entirely different video to be made talking about how certain mechanics, like blighted maps here, do not give you gold when they should. But that would be for another time, maybe if someone asks for it. What things seem to be good for getting gold and what things seem to work against it. Anyway, I'm enjoying the build a lot. I'm gonna get these last upgrades, and then I think it's gonna be time to like sit down and do a deep dive on what exactly is going to make this build move to another tier of strength. And I get the feeling that's going to require some pretty major changes in how we approach the tree, possibly going into cluster jewels or something of the like. But things here are efficient enough to get through the base game, but for aspirational content, we're going to have to squeeze out a little more. There might need to be some changes to the Ascendancy, possibly getting rid of Ramikos. Because while this is good, it does cap our Ignite at -20 fire resistance for everything. We can't go lower than that. Additionally, it doesn't help the hit portion of our damage, which I kind of wish they would change that. I don't understand why that can't also work on the hits. But if we did that, we could get Valakos and maybe alter how we do resistances and get to even higher resistances. There's also some stuff you can do with Namahu Flames Advance that involve like a complete tree rework where we would go up here and you can use the jewel to turn all this into fire damage and get a huge amount of increased damage with really good point efficiency, and then with enough accuracy we could get elemental overload, which would be nice. Yeah, I mean, we have options. They're gonna have to be explored at a later time. For now, I'm basically making this build to talk about what I've done to kind of get the build going, how it's felt for me, and if anyone else is playing the build, you know, someone took a chance on that kind of experimental thing I was working on, here's some advice, I guess, a little bit, but also here's a video where you can leave comments if, like, you're having problems, and I can maybe help you out, because I was able to get through my Void Stones deathless with just a Towa's Felling. Obviously, this is not Towa's Felling, but that's the skin for it. And that's not a very strong weapon. It does synergize well with Infernal Blow, so I think it does a little better with Infernal Blow than most others, but yeah. Hope you're all enjoying the League. I think I'm going to be playing it for at least another couple weeks. This is much better than I expected. I thought this was going to be a short League for me, and it's not, so that's fun. Very happy about that. Oh, you know what? Actually, there is a small optimization I can do. When I get one more point, I can spec out of these and spec into this. They're getting the 6 fire damage. We did that one live. Yeah, so some changes yet to be made, little optimizations for damage. I think by the time I have all my gear and a few more levels, we're going to be at like 5 million DPS, which will be nice. I think that's good enough for most stuff, especially it's good enough to farm and figure out your next steps, which is where we're at in the build right now. This is going to be the part where we decide if this build guide makes a return to the channel or not, is if we can push it to like that next tier, because it's almost good enough. It's really close. We just got to figure out that next step. Anyway, have a good one, Exiles.